Hey guys, this is Tolly and welcome to Let's Build a JRPG. Working on some menus again today, so we'll call this part 2. It's been a couple weeks since I've got a chance to stream, and I haven't done a ton of work on here. Drixie has been making new art, which we're going to try and replace some of her old art with some of these new buttons that she's been working on, but for the most part, not much has changed. When we last left off in stream, we had been setting up the skill menu, setting up so we could come into here, select a specific character, and then from there we could hit enter and or we could basically just see their skill and then go back. And I think off camera what I've been working on is we've got it so these are equipping. We also have it so that there are LT, RT buttons that we can hit to kind of cycle between, and when we go back, our selection changes to whichever one. So if we go to the guard and hit back, the guard is selected. If we go in and go to the thief and hit back, the thief is selected. So it's handling the previous inputs. And then there was a bit of an issue where if we hit back and forward a bunch, it would sometimes break. We've now fixed that so that it's less buggy. There are still issues with it that I'm not super stoked about, but some of that just has to do with UI stuff. Now it's broken, so something about the way the UI is animating is still causing some breaks in some spots. But we have solved a lot of the issues, so that things are running a little bit more smoothly. If you enter it back and forth a bunch, it doesn't continuously play as much as it was before. But yeah, we've still got one last issue with it going incorrect and going too far essentially. And I think that honestly has more to do with the layout of some of these things, like whether or not they're blocking or not. And I think some of them are overlapping a little incorrectly. Data entry, really more than code entry problems. So today though, I would like to continue with setting up some of these screens. I went and grabbed PureRef, which is this window here. Let's see if we can maximize this window. Maximize, there we go. Oh, it doesn't like that. Okay, if I try and move it. So essentially, PureRef is a art application that just allows you to drag a bunch of PNGs into this kind of canvas, and it allows you to have super high detail and zoom really far in and zoom very far out. It's super useful if you're grabbing a bunch of reference objects or reference images and you want to lay them out on a canvas that feels more like a whiteboard or something. It can be very useful for that. So this just allows me to more easily see all of the screens that we want to implement. So the one we were just looking at is basically this version here where you enter into skills. You then go into this screen where you're selecting a character, then you're moving into the ability select screen, and eventually we'll get into this node screen, which right now we only have the information on the left hand side, but we don't have the tree system set up yet. Today I want to try and go through and set up a few more of these base screens, just kind of get some of the rudimentary logic up and running for them, just trying to get everything blocked in. And namely, I want to take a look at the equipment screen, so going into a screen where you can select a character, and then from that character select a slot in their gear, being able to go up and down here and choose a specific equipment type, and then hit enter on that, and then go into a screen that allows you to change or equip different weapons or headpieces or chest pieces, whatever you've clicked on. And then for items, essentially going in and seeing a list of items with the ability to LT, RT through the item types. And then if you hit enter on a usable item, then it should select the characters on the left to use that item on. So we're going to be trying to set up these. Essentially, it's like item and the equipment sections, but it's really going to be 1, 2, 3 screens for equipment and 2 different screens for the items. Selecting item, selecting hero, selecting slot, selecting equipment for that slot. Yeah, so that's pretty much that. We'll probably bring that window back up a few more times as we go. But let's kind of dive in. So I have done a bunch of the bulk work that honestly dragged the stream down last time, where we had to set up a lot of these transitions between these things and set up the initial screens. I tried to do some of that base work because it honestly just took an hour or two, probably closer to an hour, but I've got it now so where we can go into this equip screen and you can't do anything else from here, but you can go back. And a lot of the next level transitions are all set up, so we should just be able to kind of work through some of those as we go. I think step one is figuring out what exactly do we need for these screens. I feel like the item screen is going to be easier. And the reason the item screen is going to be easier is that we had this working. I don't think this has been shown on stream, but at some point in the past I was working on a version of it that I didn't love, and we've kind of moved to our new screen system. But in here I had the ability to go in and like essentially go into the inventory, select a potion, and then select a character to use that potion on. A lot of this has gotten super broken because of the other screen work I've been doing, and I've been messing with the global scenes a little bit, so this thing doesn't quite work anymore. But we have an example of how to load up a list of items essentially, and then how to like use that on a character. So we'll have reference for this. So I think rebuilding this in the new screen system is a good place to start today. I think first step is getting the list of items to appear. So let's take a quick look at how this was working in this old system. We had this inventory menu holder thing, and then that was having the inventory menu. We had this content filler. So this content filler is primarily how we would initialize it. So we would grab the inventory manager, get all the items, and I think this is getting all the items in your inventory. Yeah, like this is getting a list of your personal character's inventory. And then we are sorting it based off tag, which in the new system will be the LTRT system, essentially. And then we're instantiating a button. Okay. This all seems fairly straightforward, and really the only thing we are probably going to care about is this get statement. So let's go take a look at the new system again. Let's go back to the right scene. Where are my scenes? Front end sandbox. So we have Ender screens item. We have the unit select and the item select. Unlike most of the other screens, this one actually starts on item select and then goes to unit select for the actual like targeting. But when you enter in this screen, we should be starting by showing the items that you have available to you. So we're going to go into this item select. This is where we're entering. And this thing is empty currently. It has no logic in it. It's simply just a screen. But we're going to have to add some components. So first off, we need a menu. So if we look at menu list, this is one of the most basic ones we have. It just needs to be a menu list component. Okay. Where's a more complicated one? How do we populate the list of skills, for example? Skill menu list. This is a skill menu list component. Okay. I think this is probably a good base to work from. So let's grab this skill menu list. Let's Control D to duplicate. And then I'm just going to turn down the background music slightly. Let's rename this to item menu list. Let's drag this to one side for now so it doesn't keep opening itself every time we move a script or rename a script. And then under components, let's create a new folder for item menu. And then we'll add this new item menu list to this folder, try and keep things organized as best we can. Then let's open that up, rename this item menu list. This update screen component takes a unit. Interesting. This might be a situation where it doesn't need to take anything. Can I have null in an interface like this? No, it has to be something valid. Okay, there's probably a better way to handle that. For now, we'll just do this, but I need to figure out a way to do update components that don't need an update. Actually, I think that means that this thing Just doesn't need to be an update component type. This menu list component inherits from the menu screen component, which inherits from iScreen, which has a refresh call. So I think if it doesn't have an update specifically, we just want it to be a refresh, which I'm gonna need to grab the exact name of. Okay, so come back into here, come back into here. We want to call refresh screen. Okay. And so in here, we're going to clear these objects and we're going to repopulate them. This has a game object pool list. Okay. This is the type of button we want to generate, essentially, if I remember correctly. So we should be able to find under our UI pools a skill menu button. Okay. And this thing referenced this skill menu button, which we open that is just this thing that is essentially a skill. So we're going to want to do the same thing for our... We're going to want to do the same thing for our items. So we're going to need to make a button. So under front end prefabs, we're going to create a new folder. And this is going to be the item folder. And we're going to need a new button. For the time being, we can probably just start with this as our base. And we can call this item menu button. Okay. It's going to need a new script all to itself. For now, we'll just remove the old one. And it may not need all of this logic, but we'll use it for the time being. Okay. Now we're going to need a new pool. And that pool is going to need to be for item menu buttons. It's going to take the item menu button as the prefab it will be generating. And then we're going to say, hey, item menu button is what we're creating here. And now if we come into here, we should be able to say, hey, I want to generate that item menu button. But instead of basing this off of the unit's ability specs, we're going to base this off of the inventory. So let's take a look back at that old inventory content filler that we were looking at a moment ago. Inventory content filler. This was grabbing the items and then looping through them based off of some tagging information to generate a bunch. Okay, let's just grab all of this wholesale, slam that in there. Okay, and then we're going to need the tag value, which was coming from the update. Okay, so maybe this thing does actually need to be an update because it needs to take in the tag value. So gotta add back what I removed. Components, this thing, grab this thing. Yeah, because we're gonna need access to the value tag. So string, this now needs to be a update instead of a refresh. And this can be tag. Now, it's complaining because it doesn't know what inventory manager is. We should be able to just use Unity Game Foundations, which is the inventory system we're using. And this thing, this poolable objects list, it wants a specific parameter type. We can probably just pass directly in the inventory item into this. And it's going to try and deallocate a poolable object interface. Okay, does that mean in this situation, slam that in there, specifically index I. Okay, so this will accept it, but that means our pool Let's take a quick look at that skill button. This is where we define it in this class. Okay, so we're going to need to create the same thing here. We'll duplicate the menu button. We'll drag that on up into the item menu. We're going to move this to one side while we're doing this so that we don't keep having it pop up in front of us again. Item, menu, button. Okay, we'll copy that name. Now Visual Studio, we want access to you, so we're going to open this up. We're going to say that this takes a item. Okay, we're just going to tag a few of these so that we can see our actual things. We want inventory item to be the type that it takes in for its data. We're going to use Game Foundations so it knows what that is. Okay. It doesn't like this because we need to update the function. So it needs to have a function that takes these parameters. Its stored data needs to be of the same type. And then stored data doesn't have these values anymore. So for now, we'll comment out any of the changing of the text. The equip icon can all go. So this button won't refresh or do anything at this time. Good. So that should be functional as soon as we add that to the prefab. So this is an item menu button, and it doesn't have any of these references, but that's fine because we shouldn't be using them anywhere. Okay, remove all those errors. Now, we have a menu object pool which has the right ID. We have no component yet, so we need to actually make a menu. So we're going to do the same thing we've been doing all along. We're going to duplicate because there's existing components that we can kind of draw from. I'm going to make this one item menu list. Get rid of the one. We're going to replace this with item menu list. And then we're going to want to give it the menu list. And we're going to want to give it the list layout transform, the same as the skill was doing. Okay. Auto deactivates. We will name this item menu list. We're going to turn off all the skill components so we can see what we're working with here. Okay. And we're also going to turn off... This can stay for now. Let's turn it off too. We might have to turn it back on in order to run and test. But so what we have now is this new menu, which has a background, and we have a spot where it's going to generate these buttons. Okay. Now we need to hook that up in our screen. So in the same way that our skill screen takes the skill menu list, we're going to have to do the same thing for our item select screen. So this is going to need to take a reference to item menu list. And just to make things a little bit quicker, we're going to look at existing code because we like to copy stuff if we can. So we're going to grab this. We're going to paste that here. In fact, to make this even easier, we're going to try and do a vertical thing so we can grab and see both at the same time. We're going to slam that in there. We're going to change this to item menu list. Item menu. Where does this get used? We register some callbacks and initialize it. We're going to want to do the same thing with our new menu. Exact same stuff. Okay. And we're going to do the selection stuff here. Basically just grabbing that menu's first object and making that the selection of the screen. And then we have some on submit and on select logic, which we shouldn't need at this time. Okay. So that should be enough for this to be testable. when we go into this screen, we should populate this with a inventory list of buttons. All of those buttons will be defaulted, I think. Close that. So yeah, this item is going to have no data in it. And we're going to populate it with the object. And we're going to do all the proper stuff we need to do for setup. But the button's not going to have any data associated with it. What's the bare minimum we could do? Let's see if we can see what would be of value. So if we do, there's ID. Is ID the value we want? Get the definition. Let's go back to the content filler, the original thing that we are looking at as reference. How did we populate the data? So we create this thing. Here we go. Item definition display name. And the other thing we had was an amount text. So we're probably going to want both of those. Probably could have used UI inventory button as a start for this as well, but I want to just start from scratch a little bit here. I'm going to comment that out, but I want to hold on to it for later. And this is stored data.definition display name. Okay, cool. So this should show the button name, and then we just have to go into the actual button itself and hook up that text again. So button text and a button text, because we're going to be using it now. Might work. We need to turn back on menu list, because nothing's turning it on the start of the game. So it has to be on by default. Object not set to a reference. Okay, what are you complaining about? We didn't set the menu in the screen. So that new screen we set up here has to connect to this menu list. We have to do that when we're not running the game, otherwise it resets. Okay, items. Okay, well, it did an error, but we also have no data. Part of that's because we didn't turn this object on. So this object item menu list will need to be turned on and off as we enter and exit the screen, which is handled by our screen transition stuff. But also, we created no buttons. We should have been calling initialize on this thing, which would be right here. And this initialize call should populate. We need to call update on this menu list specifically. So we have to call update screen component, and we have to give it a tag to start with. So what do we want to show? And we're going to start with all, I believe is kind of the default value for these tags. Yep. All capital, lowercase, lowercase, and that should get that data showing. When we enter into the screen, it should actually try and do something now. And then we need to actually have it so it turns on. So we're going to go to our screen transition stuff. When we are transitioning, let's collapse all of these down. We are transitioning from the main menu to the item select screen. We are going to close the menu, and then we're going to do item select from main menu, which is turning on the item, but we also want to turn on this guy as well. And then when we're going from item select to the main menu, we also want to turn it back off again. We made some changes while we were running. Changes made in the project don't get reset. So these changes to these guys should be okay. Okay, ran into a different error. So we're calling update on the component. And then we are calling init on the menu list. And then we are trying to get the 0th button. But we had no button in our data. Okay. That's probably because our inventory is actually empty to start. So if we go into hit play, and then if we go into window, game foundations, tools, debugger, this is going to show us what's currently in... Nope, that's not what I wanted. Did I... Game foundations, tools, debugger? There we go. If we open up our inventory, oh, we have one healing potion. So there should be one object in our inventory that we can display. Good evening, Amorphous. Welcome to the stream. We are currently trying to hook up a inventory menu. So we've done the skill one last stream where we can kind of go into our skill menu. Haven't done the skill tree stuff. It gets complicated. We'll get to it eventually. But for today, we're looking at trying to get the menu to show up and show the inventory that you currently have. And ideally, eventually be able to use an item from your inventory to heal a character with like a basic potion. And then if we have time, we're going to move into equipment stuff and equipping things. Okay, so we have the potion in our inventory. We could even add like a heal or a cure, which I think is like an antidote. Yeah, we could add that. So if we come into here and we hit enter, the problem we saw was we had no items. There was 0. We tried to get the 0th item button and there were no buttons. So somehow we failed to generate any buttons in here. So we're going to attach the debugger. We're going to take a quick look and see what's going on with these buttons. Why are we not generating any? You can go away for now, mockups. Enter. Okay, so we're going to hit go. We're going to hit items. Now there should be some stuff in our inventory, and we can see that we have a definition of an item, which is a potion, and we have a definition which is a antidote, which is the two things we saw from the debugger is currently are in our inventory. Our tag is equaling all, so we can get in here because we're going to try and display everything. And then we're going to try and find a button. Can we see if that button was successful? Can I add watch? Why are you not letting me see what this object is? Skill button is not in scope. Okay. Well, button is something, so that works. And we're adding button to the menu list, which is currently empty. So now it has one object, which is menu button. Okay, so we created an object and we added that button to our menu list. So now if we go into the initialize, sure, don't know how we got here. I thought I hit go into initialize. F11 didn't work. Where are we? Oh, it crashed. Oh, it all crashed. Okay, well. At the very least, we know that it is generating the buttons. The buttons are getting created. And I'm likely doing something dumb. So let's put a breakpoint a little further down in the code. Enable debugging for this session. Let's take the breakpoint away from here, so we won't stop here, but we'll put a breakpoint on initialize, and we'll see what's going on in here. Because we did generate buttons, and we did add it to the menu list, so that should have been fine. Let's hit enter. Oh, it crashed without saving some of our latest changes. So we've got to turn back on the menu list. What else did we lose? It looks like everything's okay. We're going to double check to make sure. Oh, the menu list got lost. So we want to hook that back up. This menu list has all of its correct components set. Did we lose any of our changes in here to our screen transitions? We did. We need to make it so that this is turning the menu list back on again. That got lost. And then this one as well needs to turn it off. Oh, did I? Okay. We're going to hit control save. Wait for the spinny thing to go away, and then we'll try running it again. Okay. Let's see what's going to happen. So we're going to hit this for the first menu, which is fine, because we know that the main menu sets up okay. It's this next menu we need to figure out what's happening on. So we're coming into here. We have a menu list. That menu list has a button list of 0. Interesting. Ah, I see the problem. We need to update the menu list before we initialize here. In fact, it's technically doing an initialize here on itself. So that's calling a init twice, which doesn't really hurt too much. Yeah, it doesn't hurt calling that multiple times, but I should avoid the extra call. So we'll just do this. We don't need the init. We just need the update. That's what our problem is, because the update will do the init for us. It's an interesting quirk of my system I'll have to keep in mind, is that if I need to do an update when we enter into the screen for the first time on a component, then I don't need to do the update. Now, we're still running into an index out of bounds issue. So we updated, we hit a init still failed. Okay, so we're gonna hit stop here. We're gonna hit a breakpoint. So it wasn't the first init that was actually a problem. Let's go back in. Okay, so now, do we have a list of buttons? We have one button. Okay, that makes sense because we only have the healing item. I didn't manually add the antidote this time. So there should be one menu item, and we should be able to set up navigation for that one item, which is, it navigates nowhere because it doesn't have anything above or below it. And then button press. We're coming into here. We're going through our list of buttons. Okay. We are getting components in parent. True. Oh, we're getting the button component, or we're getting a value of T. So what do we expect then? We expect to find an object of type T. T is based off of who sets this up. In this case, T is a skill menu button. Oh, we didn't change this value. This value needs to be a item menu button. Okay, so we need this to be an item menu button because that's the type of buttons that this thing generates essentially. And the reason we have to do that is that when we try and generate the callbacks, we say, hey, we want to find that menu button that we expect on this object, and that will be our data. And whenever we call on select or on deselect, we want to call back to the screen that's hooking up callbacks, and we want to pass that data back to say exactly which button was pressed. So in our screen in here, when it gets this data back, this data should also be of type, and it's complaining about that here now, item menu. Okay, and we're listening, and so this will come back with like, hey, button, the specific item menu button was pressed, and then we can do like button dot store data dot like definition dot ID or display name or whatever we need to get from that definition to find out what item was specifically clicked on. Cool, that makes sense. There's a few gotchas with this system that I'm still, like, I've built the whole thing from scratch myself, but there's still some pieces of it that, like, I get lost on, and I feel like that's a bad thing. Like, that I should be, like, if I built it, it should be more intuitive, but... Okay. That was the last piece, though, was just some misunderstanding or some forgetting to hook up some last few templatized parameter garbage. But this is a potion. Now, the only thing that we're updating on this button right now is the name. This SP and this E aren't, like, really important for this one. It's only there because we stole it from the skill. So if we come back in here, I think we can delete the equip thing. And then for the amount text, I think we will still want an amount text. But that's not actually amount. Or, I guess on skill it's named amount, which is weird. But it's actually correct in this case. So, store definition, get property amount text dot text. We're setting that value. Okay. So, after a couple pieces of hookup there, we now should be hooking up that parameter as well. So now we should see how many of that item we have, which apparently we have 3 potions. Cool. It's kind of step 1, huh? If we take a look here, that's now showing this potion list. And if we exit out, it exits out okay. We do fail to get our cursor back. The cursor is just not displaying correctly is all. I think that's a problem with it not fading. Not a big deal. The cursor disappearing is a very small bug, which I can resolve later. For now, let's run that again. But this time, let's try adding via the debugger to our inventory. Let's add a cure, which is an antidote, and let's make it have an amount of 2. So now if we come into here, we should see 3 potions and 2 antidotes, and we do. Okay, so that data updated and we're able to go up and down through it. Cool. Next step. Let's get some of the other components on the screen. We've got this list now populating, which was a bit annoying. Let's get the descriptor. That's what this box is meant to represent, like a description of its effect. Morphus in chat asking, play anything interesting lately? Still into WoW? I am. Still been playing TBC Classic, the Burning Crusade Classic. That's been good. Yeah. Started playing Final Fantasy 14. Jumped on that hype train a little bit. Kind of neat. Trixie's enjoying it a lot more than I am, but it's a MMO that we can play together because she is very much not interested in Classic. But Final Fantasy 14 is a little bit more her vein. So I've been playing that. That's been pretty good. I believe I've tried it a couple times as well, Amorphous. This time I feel like I'm getting into it a little bit more than I have in the past. But yeah, it's definitely a very different experience. If nothing else, it's very good reference for like how to build very in-depth dialogue-driven cities. There's a fair amount of story elements that are there that are very interesting to look at from like even though I'm trying to build like a 2D old school RPG, there's still stuff there that's very interesting in terms of like reference and things to think about. Okay, I want to grab... Do we want to wholesale steal the characters? So part of the reason that we really want to do this whole component-based system is that we want to eventually be able to have shared components between screens. And when we're looking at a screen like items and we have these, when we select that, when we go to the like, hey, I'm going to use this potion on a hero, we want to be able to select a hero to heal, and that's going to want to show their HP, MP, some stats to let you know whether or not you want to use that specific item on them or not. In the what I call out as the heal screen, which I might honestly just collapse into making it so that when you're in the skill screen, you can just use healing type abilities from here. Regardless, I want to maybe have the same type of component for displaying the characters here. So maybe for the time being, let's steal the component for unit menu, which is skill unit menu list. Let's... Could we wholesale steal this component? Could we share this component between the two screens, even though they're disparately different? What does this take? It takes a skill screen unit button. So some of the naming has made this sound very specific to this specific screen, but I don't think it has to be. I think it's just a unit button, really. So what if we also toggle on, as part of entering into this screen, this object, and toggle off this object? And then inside of here, what if we took the unit select character menu, which is a bad name. It should be called unit menu, but it's annoying to fix that right now, so we'll fix it when we do it over here. Unit menu, and then how did we hook up that menu? We do an init register callback, and then we call update. So here we did init register update. Ah, okay, I see. So yeah, it doesn't cause bugs, but ideally this is all I have to do here, and I'm gonna just kind of make that change. So then let's do the same thing we did before. We're gonna vertical layout this, and we're gonna try and copy what we can over. So we're gonna want to register. So we don't actually want to register callbacks, because on this screen we're not entering into it, but we do want to populate it. So we want to call update on it, but we don't want to register callbacks. So menu, we're going to call update on it as we enter. We're not setting it to the first selection. Yeah, I think that's all we have to do. I think we just need to have a reference to it, and we just need to make sure that we update that menu as we enter. And we're just going to reference that skill unit menu. Okay. And we enter, and it fails. It fails because we didn't turn it on. Interesting. It should have been turned on. That is the object. Nothing about this is turned off, so we should be able to turn on any component from any section. And if we turn it on, it should be appearing here. It should have gotten updated with the correct data. Okay, let's run it again. Let's take a look here and actually look inside of it to see if it did get populated. It did get populated, and it got populated with, yep, the correct data. So if we do turn it on, it does appear here as it would on the other screen. But for some reason, it didn't get turned on. Are we modifying the wrong transition? So we're going from main menu to item from main menu. Okay, should be there. Do we have any extra spaces or something? Doesn't look like it. And then main menu, same value. Interesting. Huh. Okay. this should have got called. It clearly got called because it turned on these two elements. It just didn't turn on this one. And if we do toggle it on, it does appear correctly in the right spot. Confusion intensifies. Okay. We're gonna have to dig. Let's go digging. Oh! Is it because I didn't save this screen? That shouldn't have mattered. Okay, let's save everything. Let's take another look. And Morphus, how about yourself? Have you played anything interesting lately? As I dig deep into the code. Let's check. Set active. Here. Don't care about the populate stuff anymore. Okay. 11 things. Something is trying to turn on 11 things. Fade, set active, set active. Entity, list, main menu. Interesting. There's a bug there. Interesting. There's a super bug there. This should be a 1-to-1 match. If there are 3 entity lists, there should be 3 objects. So something with the most recent code I was working on today with like modifying sequence steps to be lists, not individuals, has broken things. This was a thing that I called out in the last stream that I didn't like, is that in order to have a set active, I had to have there was only taking 1 string value, but so I had to make another set active step for every single object I wanted to turn on. I instead made it so this could be a list, but then we have to go grab the objects, but that's causing some issues. Morphus says, tried out some game called Descenders, which is a weird arcade pseudo simtori bicycling game. Okay. Also learned to play this really old Japanese card game called Koi Koi. I have heard of Koi Koi. I may be mispronouncing, but I don't think I can't picture it, but I have definitely heard the name. Yeah, I haven't played, like, other than the MMOs, there hasn't been a lot on my docket. Been fairly busy and haven't had necessarily all the time in the world that I would like to work on some of, getting ahead on some games. Let's go back to the set active. So this thing is supposed to call entry build. And entry build is supposed to go through the list and add the game objects to it. This never gets cleared, but I would have thought that each of these objects would have been different, but they must be saved somehow. So we could simply do a clear here, and that should fix the problem. And the reason that that was so many is that it was persisting in between runs, which is quite odd. But it's because these exist over here. Okay. So that still didn't work, but hopefully we got rid of the weirdness with the game object. Should be game objects, but okay, let's attach the debugger again and take another look. Run a fresh one. Game objects count 1. Okay, that's the menu list. Game objects count 3. So we did find an object. Okay. And we are setting item to true. We are setting item menu list to true. And we are setting skill unit menu list. Set activity true. Well, all right then. But why? Is it auto deactivate? Oh, I turned these things off on the beginning. And so what's happening, and this, I'm only noticing this because I've only just started going into this, trying to turn one of them on, but that breaks it. If I turn the objects, if any of the objects are, yeah, now it works. Wow. Okay. The auto deactivate was triggering in game. So yeah, if any of my objects are turned off by default, instead of using the auto deactivator, my stuff breaks. I would think then if I go in and out of the screen, then it should fix itself. And it does. Okay. Okay. Weird. Because it only happens the first time we turn it on. It tries to auto deactivate immediately. Well, weird quirks being figured out. So if we turn on objects, that works. That did populate the data correctly. Okay, so this is the whole point. We haven't seen a lot of it. It feels like my system is super bogged down with like lots of baseline having to create stuff, but this is the hope. The hope is that I'm putting in all of this foundational work so that as we move forward, we'll run into situations where we can just reuse components like this. It does mean that I probably should rename this from skill screen unit menu list to maybe just unit menu list, or if I'm gonna have a couple different versions, like here I have like a simplified menu list, and here I kind of show that same kind of simplified list, but here I have like the ones with health and mana. Maybe we need two different components for like a complex and a simplified version. Okay, so reusing that component seems to save a bit of effort. Let's... We're gonna want to heal. So how do we heal? We're gonna want to pass data. We're gonna want to select an item, and on submit, we're gonna want to grab whatever that button's stored data was, and then from that stored data, we're gonna grab a definition, and from that definition, we're going to be able to get properties about it, like manipulating its amount. Okay. We can probably also look at the inventory filler as well. How did this handle using a button? If it has to consume on click. Okay, this does some weird stuff, but it basically just passes the item and the button from the item into the use character info thing I had before. Okay, so we're gonna... So the thing I guess I need to look at is how that gets set up. Let's look for where this item's used. How did I do this? Here, we had a use item function, which would, given a target unit, would, given the set item inventory, call consume and do some logic. Okay, we're gonna bookmark this so that I know where to find this later. Bookmark? Bookmarks? Hey, add a bookmark. Okay. I don't know why it's not on the top menu, but we figured it out. Okay. So now we have a bookmark for that because we're going to need to do that logic. But for the time being, we're just going to need to pass that information forward to the next screen. So when we hit on submit, we are going to want to use an item. I think we want the same if it has consumable tag, because we don't want to use items that aren't consumable. So buttons, stored data, checking the definition to see if it has the consumable tag. And then if it does, we want to progress to the next screen. So let's take another look at how we do that in other screens, specifically like skill select. We say open screen and we pass along some info. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to open whatever this screen is. So this one is unit select item screen. We're going to open that and we're going to pass along the item button as an info object. Item definition. I don't think we want to pass the button. I think we just want to pass the item definition. Okay. That should work, quote unquote. And then on open screen, we now need to go to this screen, which is this one. And we're going to need to set up some logic in here. Specifically, we're going to need to grab that same character menu, but unlike the last one, we're going to actually need to hook it up. So open this guy like we did before, rinse, repeat, grab this, drop that there, change the name, update, and register callbacks for it. Okay, and then skill menu button data should be the type of data we're expecting. Okay. And we're going to want to set the selection to the first element of that menu. And that should be all we have to do to get the cursor to go over to the left menu to select our target for our potion. Okay, collapse this back into the main window and run this and see if it just works. I see a problem right off the bat. We need to actually set values. So in here, we need to set the skill unit menu here. Items, enter. Okay, this moving is just a product of me doing some weirdness. Yeah, this thing. I was just testing some stuff, but that wasn't working before, so it just activated. So I had a sequence that just moved this title to see if it was doing stuff. But yeah, it doesn't just work. It needs something. What does it need? We clearly transitioned screens because something moved. So at least that weird title move let me know that that happened. So we should be getting into the unit select item screen, which should be updating the menu, registering callbacks, and getting the first element and setting that to be the selection. Okay, let's debug this specifically and see what's happening. Maybe we can glean some information that way. Enter. Okay, so we're here. Selection equals null. Get the first element. Selection equals this menu button, which is... Let's go up the level. Who are you? Who are you? Non-public members. Transform. Transform will have base transform, which has parent. This is a skill screen unit button. That's what we would expect. So it should be selecting the skill unit, but the pointer is still here. So if we take a look at our selection menu, first selection is not set to anything. Is there a way to see our current selection? Debug mode? Current selection is still this one. Interesting. Why did you choose to ignore... Oh, we didn't copy all the code. We have to use that somewhere here. Goodness sakes. We're just setting some value to selection, but we actually need to do event system.current set selection. There we go. Okay, well, listen. Sometimes things are dumb. Sometimes we're dumb. Sometimes it's a combination. Item, enter. Yeah, we hit the breakpoint. Hey, now we're selecting person to heal with this potion. Then we hit enter, nothing happens because we haven't set up any functionality for when we actually hit enter. But that's working. So we're able to go into item screen, you know, with the pointer missing. We're able to hit enter on the potion screen. That takes us into the unit select items screen, which allows us to go up and down here, and ideally we'll hit enter, and then based off of what item we passed into the second screen, we can try and use that item on that character if it works. Okay, so next steps, making it work. We need that bookmark I had. Let's hit stop, go to bookmarks. So this is a use item function given a target unit. We should be able to steal this whole function, and honestly this whole function probably shouldn't live in a screen because we'll want to use items in combat too. So we might want some sort of like use item utility, or I don't know, we might want something to hold this other than the screen, but for the time being, let's say that we just slam it in here and we'll figure out a place to put it where it's universal at a later point. Now, this needs a button, or sorry, an inventory item, which we can set on entering. So when we come into here, we can have this inventory item. We have to tell it about Game Foundation so it knows about the database thing that we're using. And then use item. Button.stored data is a unit, correct? Yeah, okay, so that'll call whatever button we clicked, whichever unit we clicked will pass into use item as our target. And then this needs to get set here, and we need to do that the way that we do in one of these other ones. Somewhere in here we pass info between screens. Here, this is what I'm looking for. We want to treat the info object as a inventory item, and then we will set argument 0 to this guy. So when we enter into the screen, we're saying with the item that we selected in the previous screen is this inventory item, and then when we try and use an item, it will use that kind of globally stored one. Doesn't like this, need to use system. Doesn't like item button. Okay, this is trying to do something somewhat ridiculous. This was essentially trying to, on the screen before, update it so that it was like the item, if it you used all the potions, it would get rid of that item, essentially. I think we still need this logic, but I think now instead that logic is written differently. We need the skill, no. Item select. Pin that to the front. Pin this guy to the front. Okay. We need the item menu here. And we need that item menu to get refreshed. I don't know if that's going to work, because that's going to call refresh on the menu list, which is going to call refresh on each individual component. Yeah, we actually need to call update because we need to rebuild the list from scratch in case something has been removed. The problem is we don't know what tag it is. For now, we can say all, but we will probably need to keep track of the current tag from the previous screen, so we know how to update. That feels a little weird to me. Either that or we call update with an empty string, and maybe this thing stores its last known tag. I hate that. Let's do that. Let's do private string last tag equals nothing. If tag equals nothing, then set tag equal to last tag. Else last tag equals tag. So if it's a nothing tag, just use what we had before. If it's a valid tag, use that as set that to be our last tag. Okay, cool. Maybe we just change this to current tag, honestly. And then what we could do is reduce this logic down to just be, if this does not equal nothing, set last tag to tag. And then instead of using tag everywhere, we can just use this value for our current tag. Clear as mud, bright as night. It feels a little hacky to be amorphous, but like at the same time is gonna work, and it's only for this specific component. It's not like I'm doing this globally for every type of string-based component or whatever. It's a decision I'm making for this guy. And so now we update with nothing, so it'll just use the default value. Okay. And this whole logic about stat modifiers and HP and max HP and all that stuff, no idea if that's going to work. Probably garbage. It looks like we did set up if it has the remove status tag or property to instead minus 10 health. I feel like this was me debugging. So I think what that means is antidotes will hurt us and potions will heal us. And that's just a way for me to test that hitting enter on a thing did a thing. So let's try that. The current displayed value for a skill button, no, a skill screen unit button. What exactly is this a HP value? Is that actually showing the HP? HP text is equal to stats HP. Okay, yeah. So if we minus our health and add our health, we'll see that modified. Cool. Just a very small number. So if we come to here, let's Game Foundations, debugger, select, cure, add, modify its amount tag to be like 5. So this should cure poison. Yeah, remove status effect poison. So because it's a removed status effect, we've hacked it to instead minus 10 health from our unit. So that doesn't just auto-populate. That kind of makes sense. I very doubt there's ever a moment in our game where like you randomly get added to your inventory an item while you're on the inventory screen. It seems very unlikely. So if it only refreshes when you activate something, that makes sense to me. Okay, so let's use this on the guard. Antidote was used on guard. It didn't change. I think that's simply because we didn't call refresh on that list, though. Because this refresh component is not being called. So when we use a potion, let's do it up here so it's more explicit and easier to see. Because if it's inside of the use item function, that doesn't make any sense. So in the unit menu, call refresh component. Because we've done something, we want to refresh our data on this list. Seems logical. And you know, just so I don't have to keep doing it, where the heck am I adding my potions by default? There's somewhere that we're adding potions by default. Health. Is it called Cure 1? What was the name? Okay, let's run it. Inventory, healing _1. Where in the code base are we setting healing _1? Add 5 potions to the player's inventory at start. Okay, well, it's actually adding 3, but whatever. Can we copy all of this logic and do the same thing for cure _1 so that we just have a couple of those in our inventory to start with as well? We've already defined the variable above. Okay, this could be turned into a function, honestly, but cool. I think there's a bunch of test data stuff that we need to figure out at some point. All right, let's run it again. Inventory contains a potion and antidote now. Go to that screen, antidote, use. We used it. Come back into here. Those get used. Cool. The number of potions that we have and antidotes that we have are not updating though. It's still reading as amount 3 and amount 5. So did the antidote not get used? So the antidote isn't getting removed, but the potion is. That might just be a quirk with the system, with the old hacky code we brought over, because I didn't really look at it that closely. This is removing, this is not. Okay, that's what that is. So we just want to do the same thing here. Try and remove some value from it. Okay. So that'll make the number decrease. This should be recalculating or rebuilding. Oh, but it's only rebuilding if we remove the item entirely. But because we want to update, can we call refresh on an item button? We can. We can do that call. Which I think means we want to do this. So we call refresh for any duplicate logic. Okay, and we don't need this equip stuff or this stuff anymore. In fact, yeah, we've already gotten rid of the equip. Okay, so the display name doesn't change, but it is possible to refresh the amount. So in that situation, we don't want to call update unless we remove an item, but we do want to call, I'm going to have to add the brackets, refresh, just to update the number. This will do both because internally this is calling refresh. Well, it's actually rebuilding the whole list from scratch. But yeah, so this should work. Now we have to do the same thing up here for the other type. This also screams that this should maybe just be part of a function. What if we quick refactor, extract a function, remove item, or decrease item amount. Okay. And then replace that here. Looks fine. All right, here we go. At this point where it works, obviously, it's just finessing it so that the data actually shows up correctly. So if I hit antidote on this and I hit enter, fine, sure, why not? Decrease item menu not. Oh, we didn't set some values as we've been messing with stuff. So this needs a reference to the item menu now because we need to refresh it, and that's fine. Okay. Item menu, antidote to go down, the 4 updated, and the guard's health updated. Potion, heal, the 4 went down. Okay, yeah. Okay, those values are working. Now, the problem is going to be mainly this is broken because we are trying to use an item that has already been disposed. So we used all of it. So once we use the last piece of a potion, we need to go back to the previous screen automatically. Even though you didn't hit back, once we have no items left, we need to screen transition backwards. Now, normally screen transitions up until this point has only ever been handled by a player pushing the cancel button, which calls pop screen. But this is a public function, so I don't see any reason why if we call remove we couldn't do screen controller dot instance dot pop screen. Hey, if we have no item left, get out. Go back. Okay. We do have one more problem that I'm not going to solve right now. Huh. So this is trying to go back to the previous selection, but the previous selection doesn't exist. I think I have a function for this as well. Screen controller.instance.set previous screen selection, and we're going to set it to null because it doesn't exist anymore. And now it should just default to the top of the list. Solving problems one by one. And it does. We do get a null reference on trying to apparently use the item one more time after it's been disposed of. Ah, okay. This used call is happening after we've decreased the amount, which is breaking things. So it just needs to happen at the top so that the item still exists when because if we do it after, it might not exist anymore. That's all that is. Just a debug log in the wrong spot. Not concerned about that. We'll just move it to the top. I think it may show slightly incorrect information now because nope, because it's not showing an amount change or anything like that. It's just saying item X was used on target Y. So no more errors. Yeah, I'm just able to spam enter. Now I can't use this potion on the guard. You see my number isn't decreasing anymore. That's because somewhere in here, this must be doing a check to make sure you don't have... Yeah, we only decrease the item amount if your health is less than this value. Okay, so this would be like a fail use sound. It would be... Meh, meh, meh. That sounds right. Okay, cool. Now that's mostly complete. So we have potions. We can use potions on characters by going to the next screen over. Now, the things we're missing are a couple pieces. We're missing the components. Specifically, the ability to switch the item type that we're currently looking at. Because we might have equipment or key items or other types of things in this menu that isn't just healing items. So we're going to want to left trigger, right trigger on the top to switch between those. And when we go to use the item, we probably want to, like, what I have called out here is basically just overlay it, like block the behind part where we had the menu, and instead just be like, hey, here's that item and its effect, and like have that appear over top, and you're like, this is what you selected on the previous screen, just so it's a little more clear what's happening. So there's some UI transition-y things, but let's try and do the toggle on top next. See if that can get working. And then I'll maybe do this like extra like potion component thing at a later point. Because I might want to try and get to equipment stuff tonight. Because I'm interested to try equipments. Because honestly, to be perfectly frank, this is going really well. Not everything is perfect. There's clearly spots that I'm calling out as like, this feels bad. Or I wish that things were better in certain areas. But for the most part, when I look at my old status menu was based off of this idea of like, hey, I was going to get to equipment and I never hooked this up. And then I was going to try and go into here and I had this kind of very rudimentary thing set up. But the problem with this was like it was all over the place and I had to have like a unique script for every single screen to fill. It felt bad. Everything felt like just not broken. It was just, everything was a unique object for every single possible screen, and I had to write new code every time I wanted to do anything, and it felt like nothing was cohesive. And so although there is some flaws with the current system, when I want to make something or move something, it all feels very cohesive finally. So like there is a screen, and screens have opens and closes, and they have callbacks, and they listen and process input all exactly the same. Everything is uniform, so when I have a problem with a screen, it's the exact same type of logic for every single screen. There's not a unique special script for every single screen I want in my game. And this is starting to feel very good. The fact that whenever I want to make a menu list, like this item menu list, I can just copy an existing one, change around a couple things that were loading, and make a couple new prefabs, and it just works. That's starting to feel really good too, as opposed to having to write custom loading logic every single time. So things are starting to feel very like repetitive, but in a good repetitive way. And so when I tried doing screens before, I kind of gave up on the equipment stuff because everything felt off, and I've been spending the last few months just refining the screen stuff, and again, needs more refinement, but it's close enough now that like I'm ready to finally tackle the equipment stuff, which I wanted to do literally months ago. So let's do the toggles real quick, and then let's jump over to the equipment stuff, because there's going to be some back-end code we're going to have to write for some of that stuff, and I think it's going to be rudimentary, and it's going to be first passy, but I want to try, so. Because we're finally there. We're finally at a point where this stuff feels right, or right enough that I'm not just writing throwaway code. Okay, so if we're going to do left-right, let's take a look at our existing left-right logic. So inside of the skill screen, when I hit left right in here, this is switching between the units, LT, RT, which right now is delete and page down. But if I hooked up the controller, it would work with the triggers because inputs. So this is working. Now this is working off of a little bit of magic, which I don't think we're going to have in the item screen because it's based off of your previous selection. In this situation, we're going to need a new component, which can be based off of this guy. So this skill unit toggle, we're going to copy this whole thing. We're going to drag this under item components. I also kind of, if I'm going to reuse this skill unit menu, this should probably go under like a shared component object, but problems for another day. So this is unit toggle. We want this to be item type toggle, I think. let's, for the time being, turn this off. So what is this object? That's all of this stuff? Okay, so we definitely don't need the info part. Okay, good. We just need the top part. And we need to put that there-ish, somewhere in the center. This needs to get renamed. So this is now item type toggle. And this needs to get turned on and off as we enter into this screen. Which is this one, I do believe. Okay. And then this thing, we can get rid of the Game Foundations debugger. This thing is a skill unit name. Okay, so this is a special component to show a current selected unit. This instead is going to need to show the current selected tag. So we're going to duplicate whatever this thing was. We're going to be sad that Visual Studio keeps opening and closing itself. We're just going to move it to the other monitor so it doesn't do that. We're going to call this thing inventory or item type name. Okay, drag that under the item section. We're going to open it. We're going to rename it. Item type name. It is going to have a name value. It will not take a unit. What does it take? My gut says string at first to be like, oh, it takes the type of string it is, but like, is this actually showing the value of another component though? This technically has a current tag value. This current tag is what we are currently showing in our menu. Does this take the item menu list as its update value? Is that weird? That feels somehow weird while also somehow correct. I don't think I want components. So the problem is I don't think I want components intertalking this way. I think I want the screen to be in charge of all communications. So instead of having components talking to other components all over the place, that feels messy because we'll never be able to figure out how things are being written. Like, you won't necessarily always be able to tell. So I 100% could write this way, and I could 100% just do a thing where I make this value like public and then just use the tag. But I think I want to take string, and I want to take string even though it might cause inconsistencies in our code, because there might be an issue where like the values get out of sync somehow. But it's still better to have this written this way, because then if we ever want to know how components are communicating, we can look at the screens, and the screens are where all communication takes place. So, that being said, I think we're going to be explicit, and we're going to add this to the item select screen. And I don't think it goes in the unit, because we can't change our tag type when we're selecting a unit. So I think it's only here that it matters. And specifically, it's going to be on left trigger, right trigger. So on left trigger, right now we're always setting it to all, which is a fine starting point. But we're essentially going to want to have some different types. And on left trigger, right trigger, we're going to want to cycle through that list of types. And we're going to want to update the menu list with that type, and we're going to want to update the item type with that type. So for now, because we're going to want to replace this with whatever the real code is, but we're going to want to do, actually maybe I want that first, and then we'll update the type second. Don't think it matters too much. And then we're going to do the same thing up here. We're going to update it with all at the same time. Okay. Sorry, brain realized problem. There's a problem where we open the screen when we return to it. So this shouldn't actually be setting all if we're returning to this screen. Weirdly. There's a problem here that has to be solved, but we'll solve that later. There's a bug. This can't set open, or can't set all on all opens, just fresh open. It does need to always register the callback, but this might need to be if selection is not equal null. That feels hacky to me. But I'm gonna do can't set all on opens on every open, comma, just fresh open. Okay. So this looks right. Oh, actually it's the other way. It's if it equals null. Otherwise, if this is still going to break. See, this is exactly the problem because we set it to null if we delete everything from our inventory. Yeah, there'll have to be a better way, but this will at least fix it for now. Okay, so this is setting all, this is setting all. So this should just basically open up and say all. It's going to do that if I set the value. So this thing here needs to no longer have skill name, but instead have item type name. It needs to set this value here, and it needs to be attached to this guy. Okay. Item. Okay, it says all here. Now, next steps. Let's make it toggleable through types. Let's take a quick look back at our inventory content filler. Tag content filler. How was... Oh, we had an enum for inventory tags, which was all consumable and equipment. Okay, so we want to do the same thing here. Can I just... I don't think I can just save this as a private variable, can I? Oh, I can. Nice. Okay, and then we need an index. Come on, type. Type. All right, this is a enum index. All right, so now this value will be... So... I think it's here. I think this is where we update this. Okay. And then we just need to... I put this in the wrong function. This should be on right trigger, left trigger, not on secondary button, which is like Y or whatever you need as another button that isn't just submit or start or A or whatever. So I think I just on left trigger need to decrease this value. So we're gonna minus the index, and then if the index is less than 0, then it is equal to the count of this list. Is it length? Length for an array, -1. And then other side, we plus. And if it is greater than length -1, come on, copy, then we set it to 0. So it loops basically. We also need to update our first to be whatever the item menu's first is every time we hit these buttons, which is just a quirk of the system. I think this is pretty normal for most JRPGs or most menu-based games, but if you toggle left and right, you kind of have to just refresh what your top selection is, because some of the things you had selected may no longer be appearing. In fact, in most cases, they won't be appearing. Okay, so let's run that. We're going to need to add a piece of equipment to our inventory, though, because we don't actually have the ability to have an empty list. Our system breaks right now if the list is empty, because it'll try and grab an empty object. So we're going to add a sword, which should be a type of equipment. We come in here, we have potion, antidote, sword, consumables, equipment, all. Consumables, equipment, all. Excellent. We did lose our cursor at some point, though. That's somewhat unfortunate. I think that has to do with the fact that this is turned off. Shouldn't have anything to do with that being turned off, though. Item. It is upset that something is named with the word name. That's our new object. Doesn't like that we're overwriting a serialized name. Name is already in use, can't use that. Okay, so fix that real quick. Good. Move this debugger over here. Oh boy, we've been going for an hour and a half. I feel like I'm going slower than I would like, but not a huge deal. Items. Yeah, where is my cursor? Is it... Did I break it with some of that weird changes I was making at the top? If selection equals null, get first and then set selection. Oh, this has to be done probably after the update, because otherwise it hasn't been updated yet. So, and that creates the list. So there isn't a first. That's the problem. I see the issue, and I solved it. Oh, it doesn't fail, though. Interesting. I would think it would fail if it's empty. All right, let's add that sword. Okay. That works as I expect it to. Neat. Okay, cool. That's the toggle up and running. That was relatively painless. Again, this is the kind of thing I'm hoping for, is that, like, we already had done toggles in whatever that other screen was, the skill select one. I had hooked up the logic for it. Screens now have a way of handling toggles. Just slam some old code in there for toggling back and forth, and it just works. Lots and lots of boilerplate, lots of groundwork that needs to be set up for these screens, but now we're at a point where just adding that toggle took what, 5-10 minutes? It just works. Just works, Amorphous. Okay, so I'm gonna call that okay for now. I think this is fine. Things we're missing is honestly little dots to let us know where we are in that little left right would be a nice addition, but not, I don't have the art for that, so not a big deal. I would also like it that when we hit select on a usable item, that it like covered up the menu and just showed just the item you had selected. This would be nice, but again, not a huge deal. And a descriptor for like the effect. So like the potion heals 5 and the antidote is currently dealing 5 because silly debugging, but like showing that on the bottom as well as like the icon for that. Each of these potions and items have art associated with them that Trixie has made pieces for. So I would be nice to get those in there. But I think I'm ready to move on. We've got the base level stuff done. We can add that extra little bit of flair later. So let's go look at equipment. So we have equipment kind of, I did some of the boilerplate setup of just doing a lot of the script building a while ago or earlier today. So we do have a equip select, a slot select, and unit select, which will go in the reverse order here. I guess I just start with this one. This should be relatively straightforward. We want to show, I think, the same menu list. I think we can get away with the same menu list for now. This one is more simplified and doesn't need to show like health and mana and stuff on it, but like it doesn't matter. I can make a simplified version later. So I'm gonna just reuse. So this unit select screen is going to need to reuse the same logic that this unit select screen had. So we're going to open this guy. We're going to view in view. We're going to steal this thing. And we're going to rename it unit again because that's what we actually call our pieces. But for whatever reason, when I was writing this before, my brain was defaulting to character. But all of our pieces in our game are called units. Slam that in there, slam that in there. Grab the selection as well this time. And we want to grab this data. Rename that piece. Okay. So that should open a screen that has that now. Step 1. Let's then make it so that turns on. So we need to go to our screen transitions and we are looking for main menu to equip. So in here, unit select from main menu, we're going to want to add this unit menu object. Okay, and then reverse, we want to turn it off, so we'll add it here as well. And we'll hit play. Equip. Failed. Failed because we, once again, for the umpteenth hundred time, forgot to actually hook up the menu that we are using. So that goes there. Okay. That's the equip, and I am now selecting one of the 3 characters. That just kind of works, huh? Now, we need to hook it up so that it will show the gear on the left. Technically, the position of this list is different from my mockup. We can play with that at a later point. So we need new stuff. Can't just reuse here. We're going to need a new object, specifically this thing for showing the gear. Looks like I've called out in my mockups at least 2 hand slots, a head slot, chest slot, and an amulet or an accessory. So step one, let's build it. Step one, let's just build that UI component. Let's turn off everything else. And just because it's getting on my nerves, I think what we'll actually do is we're going to make a shared components. And we're going to drag this guy down to here so that we don't have to keep turning these on and off. We'll just do that. And then we need a new box. Something similar to this one. We're just going to grab this background. Actually, let's just grab this whole object. We don't need the menu list part of it, but we will probably need the entity and stuff. So this is going to be our... oh, it is actually going to be a menu list, now that I think about it, because it has to be able to go up and down and select the different items. So it does need to be a menu list. It's the... I think I'm calling it slot, because it's the equipment slots. Oh, I don't know when I saw your message, Morphus, or when you typed it, but said it had to go. Nice hearing from you and seeing some progress. Have a good night. You as well, Amorphous. Thanks for stopping by and hanging out. Really appreciated. Okay. Let's hit up the new art. One thing I wanted to also try was some of Trixie's new art this evening. She was working on some UI, which I don't have a good mock-up for, but she's got these new art pieces, which is what this purple thing in the background is. We also have like some different blue ones as well. But we've got some info box art, which let's try dragging that in here. We do need to set it up to be 9 sliceable. So we're going to come into here and we're going to drag these green sections in. We're going to actually move it down a little bit further. And so now when we slice this object, it will hopefully not get stretched. And we'll keep the pixel density. So let's drag that onto this menu background. Let's take a look. Oh, the scale is a little bit off from what I would expect, because those pixels are a little smaller than what she had built. Let's see if we can multiply the pixel density. Whoa, that's too much. 0.5? That looks closer. Let's also zoom into normal scale. Yeah, when that's zoomed into like 1 scale, because when you're zoomed out like this, it's trying to show the whole screen, even though the resolution is too small, so it gets all pixelated. But if we zoom in, that looks closer. Okay. Cool, let's go with that. And now let's make it a bit smaller. It doesn't need to be this big. By my mock-up, it can be like that maybe, and we can scale it as we need it. This menu list doesn't need to be generated. Most of the menu lists we've been making up until now require these button poolers so that we can like build a bunch of the buttons and have as many as we need. But this one looks like it's always going to be a set size. It's always going to be these 5 sections. So we can just make buttons for those. Kind of like we did for the main menu one, where we just made a bunch of buttons. So they're gonna need... Let's just duplicate this guy. Okay. Let's also have him use the new button. I feel like this button is compressed weirdly. Oh, it is. I think when Drixie exported this, it's got a little weird. Yeah, because this one doesn't have that compression on the end. They should all be about the same. Could I not just use the tall one? Should be able to use it as well. There we go. I don't remember what color she was using for the fonts, though. Maybe I just keep using the old art just because it was consistent, and I will speak with her about what font colors and stuff was supposed to be at a later point. Wait, which one was that I just clicked on? Background, active character frame. So that's this guy. So active character frame, put that back in. Active character frame, put that back in, and then we want to do 1 and 1 for now. Okay. What if we mix and match? I think they look a little weird together. They're not meant to be together, so... Yeah, nope. Let's leave it. Let's name this. So this name is going to be different, but this is weapon 1. But this name will need to reflect whatever is currently equipped in this spot. So it could also just be empty, but we'll do that for now. And then I have symbols here. I don't think we have symbols for the different icons yet. Sword? Technically have a sprite sword. Okay. Let's add that to the front somehow if we can. And let's double it. Okay. It's a little dark on dark. Gonna play with some images. Don't love it, to be honest. What if we put the menu button back on top? It's kind of meh. It's kind of meh. Let's try and at least collapse this down to be about the same size. 180 seems fine. Okay, and then duplicate this guy, and then now they need to be a little bit more spread out because of the extra space. Spacing 10 seems fine. Doop, doop, doop. And then the background needs to be a little bit bigger. This guy. Somewhere in that range. $190? The buttons almost feel too big. What if they were like 20? And then what if this thing was like, I don't know, 24 by 24? Yeah, it's too small. 28 by 28? That feels better. Okay, okay. Okay. Sure. Sure. Yeah. Why not? And then let's name some of these things, actually. This is icon background. This is icon. Okay, and then this icon needs to be something other than the sword. Do we have a shield by chance? We do? Okay. Now, do we have a helmet icon? I'm pretty sure we don't have a helmet icon. That works as an accessory book. Yeah, Drixie made a bunch of spell effects. We do have like potion items, but not... Well, what we have for now is what we have. I want to say commission, but I will ask her to do some more for us. So for now, we will just slam some random icons in there. Sure. And then let's, just for the sake of my own readability while I'm looking at this is accessory. Oh no, that's not even the right one. Accessory. Thank you, Google. This is supposed to be chest. Head. Offhand. Main hand. Okay. These are currently main menu buttons. Let's collapse this back into the previous group. So these aren't going to be main menu buttons anymore. These need to be... We need a new folder for equip. I don't see the new folder I just made. All right, try again. Equip. And I think it'll act similar to main menu buttons. Main menu buttons had the main menu and then the main menu data. We might want something similar in structure because these are not generated, so the data has to kind of be attached to it. So we're going to add one of these up here. We're going to drag this away because, like always, Visual Studio wants to pop up every time I make a modification in Unity. And then we're going to want the data file. And then we're going to rename this slot button. And this will be the data for it. Wow, Visual Studio decided to open a whole new instance. All right, let's just close everything down just to be sure, and then reopen. Okay, and then this one gets renamed to that. And I think it just has like a type. I think we might want an enum type, honestly. And then this one here is going to be like that, and then this is going to want to have a required type of that. What are you complaining about? Oh, get rid of the S, please. Unnecessary. We can hold the data that way. Okay. I don't think we need the data object. I think we can just pass the button around. As I'm like typing this out, I realize I can just add the data directly to this object. Yeah, we're gonna do it this way. I think the way I was doing menu buttons was just wrong because it was the first time I was doing it and I hadn't really fully thought it all out. Let's just do it this. And then let's do okay, let's stop and look at the enum thing. Let's take a look at where we're currently storing the enum value for the item stuff we were doing, because we had a value inside of, where was that? Inside of the inventory, we had a list of enums, which was this inventory tags enum, and this exists in assets. There's a scripts enums folder. Okay. Scripts enums. I see. There's only one other enum, but let's make a new one in here, which will be equipment types. And then equipment types will be a enum list of that name. And it will have main hand, offhand, head, chest, and accessory spelled correctly. Okay, good. And now we will use this enum types inside of the slot buttons, public value, enum type, or equipment type here. And for now, let's just do equipment type .toString and show what that is as the button text. That'll eventually be whatever one the character actually has equipped, but for the time being, we'll just do this so that we can see that we have the buttons hooked up correctly in a second. So instead of these guys, we want this one. And this is main hand and hook up button text. Okay, minimize that one. Next one. Remove. And offhand, hook up button text. Minimize. Remove. Add component. Head. Hook up button text. Bleh. Words are hard. Remove. Hook up chest, hook up button text, and remove. Nope, has to go the other way. Remove accessory. Okay. Now, that should be a list. This does need to have to be manually set up though, because we're not populating it, so we're gonna have to manually add each of the buttons to here, because unlike our other ones, we're not generating these buttons, they're all pre-built. Okay, and then this thing is not an item menu list, this will be the slot menu list. And then by the same token as everything else, we'll need to have a menu list to go with this button. So we'll grab this one, put it there. And honestly, it's probably better to take a look at how main menu works. Main menu. Oh, it literally is just this basic object, right? Because it doesn't have to generate anything. So it's the simplest form. So it just needs to know what type of component it's looking for, and that will be these buttons. We don't need to have a data object. And then this just needs to be, turn off insert apparently. Menu list. Okay, cool. So now we should be able to attach that as a list object to our equip screen. So this guy here needs to have that menu list. Okay. This thing doesn't need to register callbacks, but we might need it to refresh. But honestly, it doesn't need to be here. It's more important to be in the screen that it goes with. And then we just need to grab standard logic. Unit select. Yeah, we need this call. We need these calls. And we hook it up to the slot menu list, and this needs to be changed to be the right type of button. It doesn't have an update call. Okay. That should work. Okay. Yes. Yes. Sorry. run it, and we should now be able to go from the character screen to selecting this one. It won't be updating based off of the character yet, because honestly we don't have any logic to hold that. The last thing I'm forgetting is we're going to need to turn it on, aren't we? We haven't set that up yet. This thing. This thing needs to be in the transition manager for it. So for this one, we want to turn on this menu, and we want to turn it off when we're leaving here. Okay. Excellent. Here we go. Equip. It appears. Oh, doesn't work. We didn't hook up the actual transition to next screen call. Oh, we also didn't hook up the lists either. Okay, we didn't do a bunch of things. Man, so many steps. This is all you need. Okay, and then this goes here. Still mad. This should have a menu list, which is of that type. Okay, no, now it works. Okay, all those are hooked up, and then we just need to hook up a on transition here. So on submit, we want to, how do we normally do screen transitions? God. This call. And we want to go to, what did we name this? This one? We want to go to this screen. And this data, do I have to give it a value? I do. It can be null. It doesn't have any arguments right now. Eventually we'll want to pass across which unit we specifically are equipping, but for now, I just want to get the menu cursor to move to the next one. I mean, the cursor disappeared. Okay, where did the cursor go? Oh, is it behind this background maybe? Let's search for pointer. Where are you, pointer? Yes, it looks like it's just appearing behind everything. Yeah, it's right there. It's because we adjust the button to be based off of wherever the button object is. And technically the edge of the button is right there. So how do I fix this? I can technically move the icon way over like that. And then we could move the button text like that. Fine. 0 is too much. -15. Okay, let's do that for each of these. -15. Then we can move them all over to the left. They don't need to be so far over anymore. -10, 0, 0. And then the text of each of these guys can be more like that, I think. The whole thing feels sort of weirdly lopsided now, like there's too much space. So we'll just do that. Okay. Save. Just want the pointer to appear. It doesn't need to be perfect. I'll do many more passes, I'm sure, of like setting all this up and positioning everything perfectly. But that works. Now, next problem. Next problem is it's not updating the nav. So let's take a look at how main menu handles that. The main menu screen calls a init. We need to do the same thing. For our screen, we need to initialize it so that the actual navigation is hooked up, because that's where that gets done. And lately we've been doing it, the update generates all the buttons and hooks up the nav, but in this situation we just need the init. Now we can hit up and down. Okay, so now we're technically, like, we're not passing the unit across, but the idea would be is that we're now equipping for the thief. We'll also need some form of way of showing who was selected on the previous section as well. Okay, and then if we hit enter here, that's where we're supposed to then go into the next screen, which is this one over here. Okay, in which we will go into an inventory select that is of the specific type of the slot that we have selected. And then this area that's like with the black background is supposed to be the currently equipped item, which is also shown in the list of all items, but this is supposed to be like a header that's like, hey, this is what you currently have equipped. And as you equip things up and down in here, it'll change this top header one. Okay. So, next steps. Let's just keep building the screens. There is this kind of selection part that I'd like to maybe do for the previous screen, but I want to revisit that menu entirely because we're currently sharing it between all three menus that we have right now. So I don't want to necessarily add any special logic to it right this second. So let's instead move on to this final screen and start working on setting that up. So when I hit enter, I should go in and show all items of that type. Well, that character can also equip. So there'll be a couple different types of filters on that, but for the time being, let's just get it showing up with a list of the items you have in your inventory. And then ideally it'd be nice if we could actually equip them, but that's going to require modifying the units a little bit. Okay, let's work on this next. So what is that? That is another menu list that we're going to need to set up, which honestly should be similar to the one that we set up for the inventory screen. In fact, is it the same? Can we reuse that component in some way? I imagine it might need to have more filtering than the item screen. Oh, right, we need to toggle the whole thing on. Make everything all overlappy. But if I go into here, zoom out, go to the debugger. You know, for now, let's just drop that in there. I'm sure that won't break for some reason. Sword, armor. Okay. So what is this object? This object is the one we just made earlier, which is the item menu list. And technically all this object does is just display an item menu button populated based off of the items, with a current tag to determine some information about it. I think this is the exact same logic we're going to need. The only difference is this if statement is like what we tag against for what we show, and the button might be different, because technically if we look, a button in the equipment screen just has like the amount of it you have, but the item in the inventory screen, it just has the amount. In the equipment screen, it has like stats associated with it. So maybe we can reuse this if we change out what button we decide to load. Oh, but if we switch out what button, this has to be different too, because this essentially is expecting a certain type of object. Okay. For now, we're not going to worry about reuse, and we're just going to duplicate this object. It's possible we might be able to reuse this item list for both the equipment screen and the inventory screen, but for the sake of, not, struggling for 30 minutes on camera to try and figure out what I want to do, we're just going to go with making a new one, and then if we want to reduce it down into just one later, we can. So we're going to call this equipment menu list. We're going to drag that guy down into, or up into the equipment section. And then over here, we're going to have equipment menu list. And the difference is going to be this object. Okay, so this needs to be a another object as well. So this is going to be a equipment. Come on. There we go. Shift needs to work with me. Equipment menu button, which goes up here. Double click on that guy. Equipment menu. Oh, where'd it go? There we go. Equipment menu button. It will still take an inventory item, I think. This all seems reasonable to me for now. We will add more types for this, for like stats that it'll have. And then this thing will now need to use that new button that we've set up. Equipment menu button. And then equipment menu button will be the type of object we'll need to generate. This all looks to be the same. Yeah, there's something about this that can be reduced down, so we don't have to have two. Okay, and then we have now we need a new prefab. That's the thing I'm missing. So we're going to come into here, we're hit create folder, make an equip folder. We're going to duplicate this button, drag it up here. This is going to become the equip menu button. It's going to be identical for the sake of getting this up and running, but we'll add the extra functionality in a bit. This is not going to have the item, but instead have the equipment, add the amount and that, remove, go back. We're going to add a new pool. Same idea, blah, blah, blah. Equipment. Menu button pool. It's going to reference this button. It's going to have this ID. Okay, good. So we've set up all the prefabs and the items. Now we need to duplicate the menu list itself. Put that into here. This becomes the equip menu list, equipment menu list. It gets that type. Drag this into here, this into here. Oh wait, nope, sorry. This is a list layout at once for the parent. Remove that piece. Rename this one. Equipment menu list is the ID. Yada, yada, yada. That all seems fine. That all seems fine. The only difference here is this one needs to start slightly off camera, because we'll slide into it. Okay. We'll transition it to the left as we enter into this third menu section, basically. Let me bring up PureRef for a second. So yeah, basically we'll go from here to here, and then this will slide to the left, and this will slide from off camera on to make this screen appear. Okay, and then that should be most of it. The next piece of the puzzle is populating. So we need to have this screen will have this thing, and this stuff. Okay, and this will be equipment menu list. Copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. This doesn't take in this value. What does a inventory list take in? Takes in the string, correct. Okay. This needs to take a equipment button. Almost there. Okay, so we've got all this set up. This is registering callbacks. This value will need to be based off of the previous screen, I think. We need to set up the previous screen, speaking of that, so that when you hit enter, it will need to go to the next one. So we'll steal this code, slam that into there. This is going to be that screen should be. Okay. Now we just need to hook this value up here because we just went and wrote all that code. Drag this into this. And then the last piece of the puzzle here is going to primarily just be the transition logic. So when we are transitioning from the slot select to the equip, it is slot select to equip. We will be doing a translate UI on two components. We will be moving the this menu, and we will be moving the shared menu, and we will be moving them to the left. which I believe is minus 50. We'll find out whether or not that's right after, over 0.5 seconds. And then the not that one. Let's close things I'm not actually looking at. Equip screen will have the same kind of translation, but it'll be on its own component, which will be that menu we just set up, which is this guy. Okay. And it will be translating like, I don't know, 150, 275, something like that. Okay, and we'll worry about the backwards transitions after we get this working. So enter, enter, enter. Much sad. We're not turning it on. That's why I don't see it. 50 is too small also. So this one needs to be like minus 250 or something like that. We'll try that and see if it's good or not. And then in the transition, the very beginning when we come from the main menu to here, we need to also turn on this new menu we just set up. All the stuff, all the stuff. All right, this one to here, that one, and turn it off again when we're done. Cool, cool, cool. Close, close. All right, so that's not far off. Now it's just this part that needs to come over more. How much more? $220. Another 100. This one, $375. Let's give that a try. Dupe, dupe, dupe. Cool. We need to reverse it now, but that's pretty much what I wanted. I'm not sure whether or not I want all of these to be blocking, though. 375 in the other direction, over 0.5 seconds. And then I don't think any of this needs to be blocking. I think the 2, that needs to be blocking. And then what is the other half of this one? It's this one. So we need to reverse this. So we need to do a translation. Oh, not a tween 2, but a nope. Tween UI 2. Still not right. Translate UI. Got there. And that has to be on these 2 pieces. This one and this one. And it needs to be reversing this, so 250 over 0.5 seconds. Okay, and I think if I understand my system correctly, this one needs to be blocking. This one does not. This one needs to be blocking, and it is. And this one needs to not. Okay. You want the second one on every one of my transitions to be blocking so that it doesn't cause the next one, if you queue up a bunch of animations at once, to overlap. Well, that's feeling pretty good. Okay, okay. So this whole thing needs a bunch of extra love in that we need to set up like another component which is showing the currently equipped item and its stats on the top. It wouldn't actually be part of the scroll list or be selectable. It would just be a header almost. And then this needs to show specifically the type of equipment. So we need to pass in to like filter the data based off of a series of tags or a string finder, some value. We need to add the effect. So if that a sword has like +2 to whatever, blah, 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 then we need to add that data here. Looks like I have some sort of toggle on the top to switch between characters. That's going to be tricky because that's 2 screens back. We do have that for skills. So if we go in here and look at, go to skills, come into here, we can toggle between the different characters here and then go back and it remains selected. So if I go in on guard, who has 3 abilities, and then go to lightning and go back, it's on the 3rd selection. But that's, I have a function that lets me go back 1 level and change what the previous selection was. Interesting. There's some weirdness going on switching between screens that I'm going to have to resolve. But yeah. But if I want to toggle between characters here, I'm going to actually need to go back 2 or 3 screens and change what the selection was so that when we escape back out, the right one is still selected. That's going to be tricky. Okay. There's some weirdness with some of my sequence stuff, which I'm not loving, because like the fact that this cursor isn't showing up is weird. And then when I go... Oh, I see what it is. I do a fade up and fade down on the other one, and I'm not doing that fade up on this one. So this thing doesn't exist unless I fade it back up. Okay, so there has to be some consistency between my screens. If I'm going to do fades, then it has to... All the screens have to handle those fades if we're doing shared components between them. Not a big deal, but something I have to keep in mind. Okay, so we need to do the header up here. We need to do the effect down here. We need to make it so this is actually based off of... Right now, this is just... I can pick whatever, it doesn't matter. But when I go into here, it should be based off of the selection here. And this here should be based off of the character. So there, we need to set up like a equipment management system on each character. And then that should be dictating what's currently equipped in each of these spots. And you should be able to change your current equip by hitting enter here. Okay. Filtering, header, effects, setting up some character logic. But for the most part, that's kind of working as intended. Lots of pieces, but let's maximize this for a second. But I think this seems like a good place to call it. We've been going for... looks like 2.5 hours or so. Yeah, let's stop here. I might continue. Off camera some more, but I feel like I'm losing energy. What was it? Control F. Control F maximizes. Cool. Good to know. Thanks for the tooltip. But feeling pretty good. We still have to finish the node stuff on this screen. So if we go back here and we hit enter, 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 there should be like the node information here for like upgrading a skill, but that requires a little bit more back-end work still. Middle mouse to move around. That's why I keep breaking it as I'm hitting the wrong button. Okay, so still need to finish this. Need to finish some extra logic in here. Need to build the equipment system in order for the back end to work on this guy. Need to make it so that when we actually select a potion, we show the information of this selection here. But a lot of this is just sequence logic. Like we need to just spend a bunch of time, and I need to spend a bunch of time just adding a bunch of fanciness to these sequence steps so that when we're transitioning between screens, stuff is appearing, disappearing, fading on, fading off, doing slides with the background, doing a bunch of fancy animations, particles, whatever. But that all needs to be done on the, like, just, it's a time-consuming process making all of that stuff animate the way it should. So there's a bunch of stuff there. So there's a bunch of work on each of these screens that still needs to be done. And then there's a bunch of work on on making some of these animations smoother and make the transitions between screens nicer. But got this operating, so antidotes are for now debugging, debug-wise causing you to lose health. Potions cause you to gain health. The stats of the character are increasing and decreasing as you use them. The stats of the potions are decreasing as you use them. If we use all of an item, it resets back to the previous screen, which makes sense to me. We have it so you can toggle between different types of items, and if we go into the debugger and add an armor, we can now see that there's a armor piece added. So cool. A lot of the baseline of the screen's done. Yeah, so we're gonna call it here. Lots of polish to be done, but we did the major kind of hookups of the screens we need for the demo. Working towards getting this dungeon demo up and running. And we need all of these screens so that when we're actually running through the... is it this one? Sewer Dungeon? Sewer Dungeon Take 2? Yeah. When we're running through this dungeon, we need to be able to have these menu systems so that when we get items in battle or equipments or whatever, that we can hit a button, bring up that menu. You can upgrade your skills if you gain experience. You can equip new weapons as you find them in the dungeon. So, making good progress. Cool. For now, though, this is going to be Tolhi signing out. Later, guys.